Spider-Man Lotus is the worst piece of Spider-Man media I have ever watched in my life. Now I understand that this is a substantial claim. I've watched the entire MCU home series, I've watched the Disney animated Spider-Man show, I've watched the Japanese Spider-Man series, but Spider-Man Lotus is on a whole new level of garbage. I don't plan on going into the controversy of what happened with the director and the main actor and other people who worked on the film, because as we know, if you have heard anything about Spider-Man Lotus, you've heard about the terrible behavior of the people involved, the racism, the bigotry, all that. But besides all of that, even ignoring all of that and taking it as an isolated project, it's still shit. For one, the arrogance of Gavin, the director, to claim that he can write or direct a better Spider-Man film than John Watts was incredible, because not only did he fail at beating out some of the worst Spider-Man movies, he made one far inferior. Every single aspect of Spider-Man Lotus is worse than any other Spider-Man film. The acting is worse, the action is worse, the drama is worse, the romance is worse. There's not a single thing that Spider-Man Lotus does better than any other Spider-Man film. That is a triumph. It is impeccable talent to create something so shit that it's not good at any one thing. But that's enough preamble. You don't really get to grasp the gravity of how pathetic this film is without going through the entirety of it. So let's do that.
Well, I'm not quite sure where I should start. When I think about you, I don't know. God, it was so much easier then. The world wasn't so upside down. I felt like my biggest problem was making it to an 8 o'clock movie. Who knew how fast we'd all miss it? It was gone before we could blink. And I guess we're all left wondering where the golden days had gone.
So the movie immediately starts with a narration from Peter Parker that means nothing to nobody because we haven't seen anything yet. Now this is me being overly critical of the film. Of course, a lot of films start with a preamble giving you some information before we've seen things, but I promise you, the rest of the movie is so shit, it's reasonable to be mad at this aspect of it. It immediately cuts to a PS3 cutscene of Spider-Man chasing down some miscellaneous bad guys through the city. I understand this is a fan project, so they don't have the multi-billion dollars that Disney and the MCU has to make their graphics, but I find it strange that they used the PS Vita to animate this scene. I personally, if I was working on a film with this sort of fan base, would not use a Sega Genesis to make my action scene, but what do I know? All in all, the swing sequence is pretty decent. There are some spots where it actually does look good, and other spots where it looks like dog shit, so 5 out of 10.
It's not all at once. I can only sign so many autographs. Alright, look, if you turn yourselves in, I might throw in a collectible item. Courtesy of yours truly. Going once, going twice. Alright, well, suit yourselves.
Spider-Man easily follows the generic goons and immediately starts to taunt them in the traditional Spider-Man sense, but for some fucking reason they did not equalize his audio. It seems like they didn't give him a specific microphone and just used the boom mic in the area and let him speak through what is clearly a very thick, baggy mask, so he sounds muffled the entire fucking time. Spider-Man begins to take on generic Thug 1, 2, and 3, while the literal worst version of Shocker I have ever seen in any Spider-Man media suits up and gets ready to take him on, and for some reason he has rickets. He just keeps shaking the whole time unnecessarily. I understand that it's supposed to be him powering up the suit, but it doesn't look like he's powering up. It looks like he's going through withdrawal syndrome. While Shocker and Spider-Man are going at it, one of the generic goons starts to recover from the blow he took from Spider-Man and then goes to retrieve a fucking magical gun that has somehow been webbed to the side of the car. I promise you, I went back and rewatched the scene multiple times. At no fucking point does anyone pull out a gun and get it webbed to the side of the car. No, actually, let's go back and rewatch it again together. Look here, these guys come up, they're talking, he webs the two guys at the side, he kicks the center guy in the face. During that whole scuffle these guys are fighting, it sounds like some gunshots go off in the background.
You know, you guys are the angriest fans I have ever met.
Shocker is getting dressed up, and even then, after that, when him and Shocker are fighting, look at the side of the car. No gun here. Look at the side of the car in this scene. No gun here. He keeps fighting Shocker, and all of a sudden, this fucking Glock was webbed to the side of the door. When did that fucking happen? And even worse than that, this guy pulls the gun off, aims it at Spider-Man, Spider-Man webs it, pulls it towards himself, and then the gun somehow hits the guy in the face.
Not scientifically possible!
What the fuck is the editing in this movie? These guys' brains were filled with so much racism that they couldn't even think to edit properly. How did that happen? It seems like there's a missing scene in between the initial webbing of the gun and the gun being flung back into the guy's face, where Spider-Man makes sort of a half turn and whips it back around at the guy. But without that establishing shot, it just looks like he pulls it through time and space. Then we get this great value. I saw Captain America Winter Soldier and I thought it was really cool knife scene where this guy flips the knife once. Is this guy a trained assassin or is he just a regular goon? Why is he so stylish with this shit? It doesn't make any sense. Spider-Clan then runs out of webs in the middle of the fight, which is, you know, typical Spider-Man stuff. In any story where Spider-Man uses web shooters, there's always going to be a scene where he runs out of webs and he goes into hiding, and the villains for some reason begin to approach him and then stop and just wait for him to pop out with the advantage. I don't know why they don't keep approaching him. They just give up on the fight at that point. He comes out and beats them, and Mr. Vibrator over here, who can't sit still for some reason, gets knocked out with a pretty violent looking punch. I'm not mad at it. I do enjoy Spider-Man going ham in any media, so it's fine with me. And I hope that you like that action sequence, because that's the last fucking action sequence we see in this entire movie. There's an hour and 50 minutes more of movie to watch, and that's the last time we're gonna see Spider-Man fight somebody. Isn't that sad? The movie moves on and we get a bunch of establishing shots of New York City gotten off of some stock footage website showing the city throughout the day, and time passes until it is very late in the evening. Peter runs up in an outfit that is reminiscent of the outfit that his character wore in the retro cartoon, so props to the director and the costume department for that. But he runs up to the Cobble Hill Cinemas where he's supposed to be meeting his friends to watch a movie. And this leads into one of the dumbest parts of the movie. I should stop saying one of the dumbest parts of the movie, because I don't think there is a part of the movie that isn't stupid. Peter meets up with Harry, MJ, and Gwen, the latter who he is in a relationship with, and immediately apologizes in typical Peter Parker fashion for missing the movie.
Guys, Gwen, I tried to get here on time. I really did.
But your bike was stolen? You're stuck at the Bugle? You're studying late? Something like that, Peter?
Something like that.
It's fine. The movie wasn't that great anyway.
Told you guys you'd be late.
Thanks, Harry.
How you been, buddy?
Couldn't be better.
Hey, what do you think of the Fu Manchu, huh?
There's nothing there.
It's still growing in. Just give it some time.
He's been growing it out for 2 weeks.
Okay, no, it has not been 2 weeks. It's not been 2 weeks.
Peter, guess who we saw in the theater today? Flash Thompson, Liz Allen.
Never gonna last.
No. In a shoe game, absolutely embarrassing.
MJ, I've heard just like this.
Didn't know. Sorry.
Now let me ask you, what time of day do you think that action sequence took place in? Because if he went from that fight where he was stopping those miscellaneous goons directly to his rendezvous with his friends, there's no way on God's green bountiful earth this son of a bitch would have missed the entire movie. How the fuck did he manage that? It's like 8 p.m. right now, so let's say it was fucking 6 when that fight was going on. He's Spider-Man. He swung through the city all the way back to, let's say, Queens to change and take a shower. How fucking long did it take him? He didn't even get there halfway through the movie. He missed the entire movie. Okay, let's dive even deeper into this. Let's say the movie was minimum theatrical length, so 90 minutes, 1 hour and 30 minutes, and there were previews for this movie, and those previews took 15 minutes. That's an hour and 45 minutes, and let's say it took another 15 minutes for them to start walking out of the theater. That's 2 hours. He just couldn't fucking make it in 2 hours. What the fuck was this guy doing?
Hey, what do you guys say we go grab some dinner?
I don't know. I think I'm gonna head home. It's getting a little late.
Well, hey, wait a minute. It's barely too late.
I don't
No,
know.
come on, I'll pay for you guys. Completely on me.
Harry,
I know the perfect place, too.
I just...
Gwen. Best sandwiches in New York.
So after convening together, Gwen Stacy, who is apparently dating Peter Parker in this universe, is upset with the fact that Peter was completely absent from the night's festivities and wants to call it a night. For some reason, instead of Peter Parker going over there and apologizing for him being absent, he sends Captain Underbite over here to go talk Gwen Stacy into going to dinner. They have a dinner and they have fun and laugh, and we get to see a bunch of B-roll footage from the making of this film, while we have a really dumb monologue playing in the background of Peter talking about how it was the best of times, while Gwen Stacy looks absolutely miserable. After their nice dinner, Harry and Peter have a little aside where they talk about the fact that Peter is getting ready to propose, which makes absolutely no sense because, by all accounts and all we've seen, it looks like they had a terrible night. It could not be a worse time to make the decision to propose.
Alright, remember what I told you. Stay sharp, don't forget the knee. You know the drill. No pressure? No pressure. Thanks, Harry. Seriously, don't mention that.
Harry, are you coming?
Yeah, just a sec.
Don't screw this up. So, what movie did you guys see?
Wait, what? What sort of fucking question is that? You're telling me the entire way to the restaurant and then during the entire time in the restaurant, he never asked the question what movie they saw? Did he not know what they were going to see before he met up with them? Let's just pretend that that's the case. Like they had a spur of the moment decision. They went to go see a movie and decided, hey guys, we should all go see a movie, but we'll pick what movie we watch when we get there. After that whole time when they were laughing and going back and forth, at no point he decided to ask, hey, what did you guys end up seeing? Who wrote this movie? Peter and Gwen continue on their walk, and Peter does have an actually pretty decent emotional scene where he apologizes to Gwen for always being busy doing something else and constantly missing things, which speaks to the character of Peter Parker and the dichotomy of having to be Peter Parker, the friend, the boyfriend, the nephew, the employee, the student, while also having to be Spider-Man the hero. So I'll give them props for making that apology work well.
Look, I'm sorry I didn't make it tonight. And I'm sorry I have to keep on saying I'm sorry. You know how it is with May and the Bugle. I'm really trying to be better.
I know you are.
Let me make it up to you.
But then immediately after that, they have the oddest emotional beats in a scene where he drops Gwen Stacy off and is contemplating proposing, and she teeters back and forth between being what seems like upset at him for not proposing, like she's anticipating it, and him not explaining why he wants to take her up to a cabin for the weekend to propose then, or just hang out then, or celebrate then. It doesn't really make sense. He ends up not proposing for the reason that the film tries to portray, I think, is because he gets distracted because he hears sirens in the background and he has to go do his Spider-Man thing. But he just doesn't do that. He doesn't do any Spider-Man thing. He just leaves. That's it. He just doesn't propose, which, I mean, like I said, it wasn't a great night for it, but if you're setting up the baits for something to go a certain way, then have it go that way. You're not subverting my expectation by not having it going that way. You're just confusing me.
Because what?
You know what? It can wait. Right now, I want to remember this moment. How it is. With you in front of me.
Completely perfect and beautiful.
I love you, Peter Parker.
And I love you, Gwen Stacy.
Good night, Peter.
Night, Gwen.
We never did get to take that trip. Did we, Gwen?
Immediately after, we get a opening credit sequence, which, who cares really? I mean, it's nice, it looks nice, it's fine, who cares? But then directly after that, it cuts to a scene where Peter is recovering in bed after clearly going through some, for lack of a better word, shit, and the same sirens from the scene prior are playing, which in your head, as a consumer of this movie, you would think that they're trying to signify to you that he left to go address this battle that led to this state of affairs, and there's a police report on screen or news report on the television that he's watching, and it says that Norman Osborn is dead after being found dead in a warehouse, and Spider-Man is believed to be responsible for his death, and also Captain Stacy and Gwen Stacy are dead. But weirdly enough, it's completely unrelated to the scene before. It has nothing to do with him leaving that night and hearing those sirens and doing something else. They never explain it. It's so bizarre. It feels like they want you to figure it out, like fill in the blanks. How about you guess what happened, and whatever you think happened, sure, why not? That's what happened. Because they never really elaborate on it. They hint at it. They do a bunch of flashbacks and flash forwards and whatever, but they never clearly explain or even give you enough pieces to put the puzzle together yourself. They kind of just throw a puzzle box into the room that you're in, and they say, I think all the pieces are in there, go for it. And then you open it up and you realize it's full of macaroni. There are no puzzle pieces in there. Next, we see Peter Parker at Gwen Stacy's grave, being all sad about her death and whatever. We haven't had enough time with these characters to give a shit about anything they're going through. Mary Jane Watson comes up and tries to comfort him, and for some reason they just start arguing about the fact that she wants to go to parties. I'm sorry. What the fuck is this movie? What the fuck are they talking about? They just start beefing because she's like, hey, you want to go to a fucking party? And he's just like, you're a joke. The fuck are you talking about, bitch?
I had a feeling that you might be here. Your Aunt May called, and Jonah, and Robbie.
What are you doing here? I'm asking you why you're here. What do you want?
I'm worried about you, Peter.
You're worried about me?
Yes.
I'm trying to recall when I've ever seen you worry about anything.
Okay.
None of you get it. I don't want to talk to anyone.
Peter, don't get mad at me for trying to help.
You're not trying to help.
Yes,
I know better
am.
than most. You never cared about that. Never.
Well,
So get to the point. Why are you here?
because everything's a mess, Peter. I haven't seen you in weeks. Harry is gone. Nobody wants to go out with me anymore.
What, so you came to bug me about it?
No. I came by to see if you wanted to go to a party or something.
Party?
To clear your mind.
You're a joke.
I don't know what the that was.
Anyway, she gives him a letter addressed to Spider-Man in the most ham-fisted way. They tried to let us, the audience, know that she knows he's Spider-Man, I think, because I'm fairly certain never again in the movie does she address him being Spider-Man, and never again does she even hint at her knowing that he's Spider-Man. So I don't know what the fuck this is about.
Take this. It's for Spider-Man. Robbie, he was wondering if you could give it to him.
He's retired.
Retired?
He can't hurt anyone else.
You give this to him. And you tell him that he is not responsible for what happened. And I think that you both know that.
Cause she knows, and I know she knows, and I know she knows.
Peter then opens the letter and discovers it's from a terminally ill child who has faith in Spider-Man and is his #1 fan and misses him so much and yada yada yada. And you can tell now that this film is trying to emulate the 2-part episode from Spider-Man 1996, where it was Make-A-Wish and then Attack of the Octobot, wherein the same exact storyline happened, where Peter was so distraught from having to deal with all the social pressures as Spider-Man that he stops being Spider-Man for a while. But you can bet your bottom dollar that this movie manages to fuck that up as well. Peter returns home to find Harry Osborn back from his hiatus, drunk and passed out on the couch. They have an argument where Peter is upset with him for some reason about going missing for a couple of weeks after the death of Gwen Stacy. But if you remember, Harry's dad also died, and Peter just rails him for it. He's just like, look Harry, where were you? My girlfriend's dead. Like, this guy's dad is dead. Why are you being the way that you are?
You abandoned everyone. Please, you're one to talk about abandoning people.
It has nothing to do with this. It's about Gwen. Do you realize that? She just died.
I know.
Then where were you? Why didn't you show up? Listen to me, she had a funeral. Everyone was there. May, Liz, Flash, Jonah, everyone. Yet here you are, running around, doing whatever you want, hiding. My father just died! I thought you of all people would be able to understand that.
The way they personify Peter in this, it just doesn't make any sense, which does lend itself to a sign that the writing in this film is just extremely amateur. They didn't have anyone who knew anything about anything writing this movie. I guess they just threw together a bunch of references and thought they were getting something out of it, but it's just a failure on all levels. In the next scene, we go through a sort of nightmare sequence where Peter is reliving some of the scenes of the movie that we've already seen, but the part that I do enjoy about the nightmare sequence is the fact that Gwen Stacy opens up his shirt to reveal the Spider-Man costume and then immediately blames him for her death, which speaks to Peter's shattered psyche because he constantly has to battle with being Peter Parker and being Spider-Man as two separate entities. So again, they did that pretty well.
What's wrong? Gwen?
You killed me.
After his nightmare, Peter wakes up and tries to make himself a cup of coffee, where he finds a flash drive that has a bunch of B-roll of the Ku Klux Gang getting together and laughing and all the memories with him and Gwen and Harry and whatever. I'm pretty sure it's just footage from while they were working on the movie, behind the scenes stuff, and I'm not mad at them for utilizing the footage they had available, but it just feels very lazy, and it feels like it's used to pad the runtime to get it to theatrical length. And there's a lot of stuff like that, because after he finishes watching the entire little montage. He looks over and sees that letter from the sick child, goes to his closet, puts on his new Spidey suit. He had two Spidey suits for some reason. There's one that was damaged in that fight with the Goblin, and then he just has a perfectly intact one underneath in a suitcase. So whatever the fuck that was about. And then he leaves, presumably to go see the kid. And then we get another scene of Harry Overbite, Underbite, Weird Jaw, Osborn just being sad throughout New York City. It's just him going from location to location because we gotta get that runtime up, baby. But at the very least, that scene leads into a scene where we get a beautiful, crisp PlayStation 4 cutscene of Peter on a bridge in the rain, thinking about the night Gwen died. And you know what? How about another flashback? Black and white. Look at Gwen's body. It's real sad, isn't it? There's so many flashbacks in this movie, it's kinda insane. But halfway through that flashback, it cuts to another flashback, this time in color, hooray, where Spider-Man is fighting the worst looking Green Goblin I've ever seen in my life. Think about the worst looking Green Goblin you've seen, like poor cosplay, but worse than that. And for some reason, Green Goblin has Iron Man's repulsor beams. And Peter has to stop him with a PNG of spiderwebs because he ran out for some reason. Halfway through the fight, the Green Goblin decides to stop fighting, and it's time for him to monologue and taunt Spider-Man about Gwen Stacy's death, and then decides he no longer knows how to activate the QuickTime event so he can block Spider-Man's attacks, so Spider-Man has a reason to start beating him halfway to death. And I remind you, Norman Osborn dies during this scene. So while Spider-Man stops himself from beating him to death, he doesn't do anything to save him. He lets him burn to death in this warehouse that they're fighting in, which is absolutely psychotic. After the flashback with Green Goblin, we go right back into that beautiful PlayStation 4 cutscene, and then to a scene with Mary J. Watson looking very, very depressed. But we can't explain why she's depressed without going into, you guessed it, another flashback. This movie is 75% flashbacks. After we see what happened in the conversation with Gwen Stacy earlier in the film, Flash Thompson comes out to Mary J. Watson, where I'm assuming they're at some sort of party, and he discusses why she's so upset and all the depressing things and yada yada yada, and why she had feelings for Peter while Peter also had feelings for Gwen. And then Liz, the character, gets brought up. It's just a lot of member berries, just throwing out things that, like, oh yeah, you're a fan of Spider-Man. Does this name sound familiar? Do these character motivations sound familiar? Oh, we know we haven't set them up in the film at all, but you know who we're talking about, right? It's kind of like what Zack Snyder does, where he will just hint at things that he knows that you know because you're a fan. The next day, Peter finally shows up for that terminally ill child and showcases a new power we've never seen Spider-Man use before, the power of teleportation, because he somehow opens up the window to this child's room and then apparates in the center of the room, dangling from the ceiling like he's Batman or something.
A little bit of webbing. Spider-Man.
I hope I'm not interrupting.
Spider-Man looks around the room and notices all of the collectibles and the memorabilia that the child has up, and begins to understand that this child does have a true, genuine reverence for him. The child comes back and shows him more collectibles and kind of goes into all the things he likes and the fact that he found some of his discarded web cartridges. Spider-Man explains how he created the web cartridges, but in the midst of all this, because Spider-Man's faith in himself is a bit shaken, he asks the child why not one of the other superheroes, and then name drops Captain America and Thor.
I can run in this.
This is great and all.
Why not Captain America? Or Thor?
What do you mean?
Why me?
Because the director of this movie thought it'd be cute to insinuate that in his universe, Captain America and Thor exist. And I'm sure they're as racist as Spider-Man is. After this, little boy boots up one of those old classic Spider-Man TV games, and while Spider-Man is playing a video game of himself, the kid remembers that the movie's plot has to get kickstarted. So he asks what happened to the girl on the bridge, because he knows that bringing Gwen Stacy up again snaps this movie back into the right direction. But wait, there's more. We gotta pad that runtime, so we bounce right back to Harry Osborn grieving at his father's grave, remembering all the times his father was an emotionally abusive asshole, and who comes to the rescue to snap him out of his grief? Mary Jane Watson. Is she just hanging out at this cemetery waiting for her friends to pop up? She comes out to the cemetery on this rainy day in a car. So she doesn't walk up, she drives up, hops out of the car, and she is fucking soaked, like soaked down to the bones. Not an inch of her is dry. And I guess the director of production or whoever realized, all right, well, we got her too wet, somebody towel her off, because in the next cut she's a lot drier than when she got out of the car. Why did she get out of the car wet already anyway? Are you telling me she had to walk 10 miles to get to the car first? In the rain, and then just sat in there and never dried off? After that debacle of framing in that scene, we're back to Peter talking to Tim about what happened on the bridge. And then Tim says something that's a bit odd. He says that the Bugle is writing slanderous lies about Spider-Man and what happened on that bridge and had his part to play in Gwen Stacy's death, which is normal for the Daily Bugle. But then he says, you tried to save her. I saw the video footage of that day. Are you telling me that there's video footage out there in the modern world of Spider-Man trying to save Gwen Stacy? And people just printed some bullshit, ran with it, and I just don't get it. And somehow even the news was questioning Spider-Man's culpability and his potential role played in Gwen Stacy's death. It just doesn't really add up in the end. And while Tim, the little boy, is trying to convince Spider-Man that he is this great hero and that all of the Bugle's nonsense is lies and it doesn't mean anything, Spider-Man tells him they're all stories and made up for some reason, that tries to insinuate that he actually didn't do all those heroic things that the little boy has knowledge of him doing. There's just a lot of weird decisions made in this movie in relation to the dialogue and the writing that really forced me to think hard about what's being said and try to justify why they're saying what they're saying. But he realizes the only way to convince the young boy of what he's saying and why he's not really a hero is to pad the runtime by going over his entire backstory about how he became Spider-Man. The flashback goes all the way up until the moment where he almost kills Uncle Ben's killer. And after Spider-Man tells his story to Tim, Tim gets a scrapbook to show him about all the good things he did. And Spider-Man gets so frustrated and disappointed in himself that he tells him, you know what? I can't do this, kid. And instead of leaving out the window that came in, he decides to start walking deeper into Tim's house for some reason. It's just, you know what? I can't do this, kid, but I'm going to walk deeper into your house because I know in there, the next scene that's going to keep pushing this movie forward is going to happen. Meanwhile, in Harry's side of the story, we spend the next 7.5 minutes hearing him and Mary Jane go back and forth about something or whatever. It doesn't matter. The entire scene can be cut out and it wouldn't change a single thing. We don't learn anything important about these characters. I'm not even going to waste any more time on it. Back to Spider-Man. It turns out that I was right. Spider-Man walking into the kitchen did serve a purpose for the plot. He had to talk to Tim's mother, who then gives him the little pep talk that he needs to realize he is a hero.
You've seen the headlines. Figure it out.
The Daily Bugle? That's why you're giving?
It's about the truth. It isn't fair that your son should look up to someone who isn't half the hero that he
What
thinks
did you
they
say
are.
to him?
I told him what he needed to hear. He's better off.
Just don't get it, do you?
I don't know.
That little boy has looked up to you his entire life. He has watched you save thousands of people. He's read every Bugle slander, and it didn't matter because you were his hero. That's what he thinks. So, it doesn't matter what you think about yourself. Because he deserves somebody to believe in. He doesn't have anything else. So, please, give him something to believe in.
And he goes back and enjoys Tim's scrapbook, showing him all of the greatest hits of Spider-Man's adventures, him taking down all his villains and being the best superhero ever. And after listening to all the tales and looking at all the memorabilia around the room, it puts a battery in Peter's back and he realizes, you know what? You're right, Tim. I am the shit. And he feels so much better about himself. Hooray. But before he leaves, they have to rip off Spider-Man 96 one more time. So, in Spider-Man 96, after Peter goes through a vastly more superior written ordeal with the terminally ill child in that series, he does at the end reveal himself to be Peter Parker, and she passes away sometime later, and it never is a big deal because, you know, she's not going to tell anybody. So, you know, they have to ape that bit too.
I should be thanking you. You made me believe in myself again. If there's anything you ever want.
There's one thing. Would you take off your mask for me? I want to know who you really are.
But I can't. Oh, wait. Maybe I can. For you, Taina.
Wow! You're Peter Parker!
Yes, that's who I am.
That is so cool! Thank you, Spider-Man. Peter, you are the best friend I ever had.
I was thinking the same thing about you.
I'll keep your secret for the rest of my life.
Thanks, Taina. Good night.
If you ever need anything, I'm a call away.
Wait, Spider-Man?
Yeah, Tim?
Well, I was just wondering if you could do one last thing for me.
Anything. What is it?
Would you tell me who you really are?
I've never shown anyone my true face before. If any of my enemies find out who I am, people I love get hurt. Can I trust you?
photographer on all the Daily Bugle newspapers.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. This mask. It means something to a lot of people.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And before he leaves, after revealing himself, Tim asks if Spider-Man will be returning, and he says yes. And then we transition into a PlayStation 4 cutscene of Spider-Man's final swing, and you would think that the film would end there. He swings off, we know that he's coming back, his spirit is rejuvenated, but for some reason they drag this thing on. The next couple minutes of the film were spent showing Spider-Man basically coming back into his own. There's a lot more color in the scenes, and we get to hear this voiceover of him basically leaving a post-mortem message for Gwen Stacy to help him cope with her passing. It's nice and all, but it just feels a bit pointless because we don't have the emotional weight behind the loss that we would need to actually give a fuck in this movie. After Peter finishes his recording, Mary Jane and Harry come in and they finally have their little tita-ta, and they make up for all the wrong things said and blah blah blah. Honestly, this is Yap, the movie. It doesn't really feel like a Spider-Man fan project from fans of the character who saw what the MCU were doing with the character and felt like they can do better. It feels like a bunch of drivel from people who are too up their own ass to get out and smell the roses. There's just so much talking. From this, we bounce to Flash's going away party. He's going to the military, whatever. Peter's about to show up and boom, he's pulled away because you know what? It's Spider-Man time. And you know what? I'm just glad the fucking movie is over. All in all, I give this movie a 1 out of 10. I would give it a 0, but human beings who breathed oxygen worked on it. So that means there was some amount of minuscule effort made to create something. That's the only reason why it's not a 0, because they ended up with something at the end of it. We get a final swing scene, which is more than I can say for the MCU, because they just did not know how to let Spider-Man web sling in that movie. So we finally get that, but even that looks like a PS3 cutscene. So overall, I feel like I've given you guys a pretty decent idea about how I feel about this film, outside of all the controversy, because when I went into watching Spider-Man Lotus, I was genuinely afeared that I would really enjoy it, because I'm a fan of Spider-Man and I do not like any of the MCU Spider-Man films, and yes, that includes Spider-Man No Way Home. So when I heard about this project, the fact that it was people who thought they could do better than the MCU, who felt like Spider-Man wasn't getting his just due, because the last truly great Spider-Man film we got was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. I thought that maybe I might be seeing something I liked, and it would kind of suck that it came from racist assholes. But no, it proves that once you're racist, you're an idiot. You're not an intelligent, talented person. Racism and stupidity are hand in hand. These people were a bunch of useless, feckless, untalented imbeciles with too much money for their own good, who got together and made a piece of shit product. Fuck Spider-Man Lotus. Thanks for watching. Behave yourself.